Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee made a fervent pitch to the industry at the two-day Bengal Global Business Summit, which kick-started in Kolkata today. Pitching Bengal as a gateway to northeastern states and Southeast Asian countries, Banerjee also stressed on the fact that the state had recorded an industrial growth of 8.34% as against the national average of 5.6% in the fiscal year 2015. The inaugural session today was attended by industry bigwigs like Mukesh Ambani, Sajjan Jindal and YC Deveshwar, apart from Kishore Biani. Is it safe then to assume that West Bengal has shed its anti-industry image, or its alleged anti-industry image, one should say? I'm now joined by Dipankar Dasgupta, former professor of economics at the Indian Statistical Institute and former secretary at the Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion, Mr. Ajay Dua. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us on The Big Picture. Let me come to you first, Mr. Dasgupta, since you are in Kolkata and you've written extensively about the Bengal economy. In fact, very recently in an article in The Telegraph, you talked about, you pretty much sort of echoed the sentiments of the TMC government, quoting about how the state GDP has consistently been above the national GDP. But you've said it's a poor image that still sort of affects Bengal, at least when it comes to an investment destination. How do you sort of, I mean, how do you look at Mamata Banerjee's achievements in the last 5 years on the economic front, sir?
Sorry.
Well, let me put it this way. The last 5 years have not been very pretty, of course, in all the fronts, but there has been an attempt by this government to try and improve at least the work culture, if not the industrial scenario. That much is true. So because as far as we can see, not much has happened as far as the growth of industry in this state is concerned in the last 5 years. But a lot has happened in terms of an attempt to sort of get rid of the sort of things that used to scare away industrialists from the state. Like we haven't had many bunds during the last 5 years, which I think is a big achievement after 34 years of left rule. So that is definitely one achievement that goes in her favor. That much I can say.
Then, sir, essentially, Professor, essentially you're saying then at least there is no ambivalence on the part of the Bengal government, on the part of the TMC government, as far as business is concerned, then?
Absolutely, yes.
Right. Comment on that, Mr. Ajay Dua. I mean, clearly things have changed on the ground, you know, also reflected in the World Bank's state-wise ranking. But, you know, what's the sense you get from Delhi when you speak with industrialists, when you speak with your colleagues? Is there, you know, is that image where Mamata Banerjee forced one of India's biggest business conglomerates to vacate the Singur property and move over to Gujarat? Is that image still etched in the minds of the people, and because of which she is being judged still?
I think there is a great degree of ambivalence still around the country, not necessarily in Delhi, because Delhi doesn't have too many industrialists wanting to invest outside Delhi or particularly in Bengal. I think there is still a degree of doubt about the various attempts which were just talked about by Mr. Dasgupta, whether those are bearing fruit or not. I think there is a policy of wait and watch still in the minds of private investors as well as foreign investors into India about investing in Bengal. They have yet to see that there has been a visible change, including in perception outside Bengal. I think what we have seen, I was reading somewhere that, say, in the year 2013, which was very much under this present government, 23 new industries came in Bengal, West Bengal, with a capital investment of 1,400 crores, 1,403 crores, which means they were basically medium-scale industries. No large industry really has actually gone and invested in Bengal, be it a local industry from Bengal or an investor from outside.
Right, right, right. Mr. Professor Dasgupta, tell
I
us a
think
little bit about the...
it's probably
Right.
working.
Right. Actually, I'm also going to ask my team to correct the audio for Mr. Dua because I kept losing him in the course of the conversation. Professor Dasgupta, you know, you've written about the numbers, the state GDP numbers, which have consistently and which clearly shows a secular trend of consistently outdoing the national GDP numbers. So what do you attribute that largely to? Because clearly there is economic activity happening, and year after year economic output, overall economic state output is also going up.
Right. I did mention that.
Right. But
I did
would
mention
you
that.
say...
And what I
Right.
looked at was...
Yeah, please go ahead, Professor. Go ahead.
What I pointed out... Yeah, what I pointed out was that the per capita income in West Bengal has been consistently higher than the per capita income for India as a whole. And that has been happening during the tenure of the present government. Now, what do I attribute it to? Well, the agriculture hasn't done too badly. It hasn't done extremely well, but it hasn't really gone down in any substantial sense.
Right.
But as far, and there has been a good deal of activity in the tertiary sector. But as far as industry goes, as far as manufacturing goes, that's where the main problem is. What has happened is that we have the West Bengal state has fared quite well as far as the unregistered sector is concerned, whereas as far as the registered sector is concerned, it has not done well at all. And
that's
its entire contribution to industry has been from the unregistered sector, and which has employed a lot of people. And I think that is what really explains why West Bengal has been doing well in terms of per capita income in this state. Yes.
Right. Mr. Ajay Dua, I mean, considering the fact that, you know, you were talking about the perception, and there also, you know, Bengal really hasn't sort of scored well, at least not as much as the economic data, you know, would sort of justify. So is this perhaps a sobering reminder also to many of our politicians today that that even when you're in opposition, watch what you say, you know, sort of be very careful of your action, because in this case, Mamata Banerjee's and the anti-industry image that she had sort of created before coming to power still haunts her tenure.
I think so. I'm afraid that that perception still persists in various parts of the country about her. The proof of the pudding is eating it, as we all know. Which major industry during the last 5 years after the exit of the nano project by Tatas has actually made movements towards setting up their production units in Bengal? It's very difficult for me to be able to recall any major.
Do you empathize with her, Mr. Ajay Dua? Do you empathize with the TMC? Do you empathize with her? Because what the TMC spokesperson, the TMC, you know, party keeps saying that do not forget the fact that there were 35 years of left front rule. While there may have been a lot of good things about the left front rule, but clearly as far as, you know, one issue of debt is concerned, as far as economic, you know, mismanagement is concerned, a lot of the blame falls on the doorstep of the left. So purely from that perspective, are you sympathetic of the TMC government in that sense?
No, certainly. The empathy is there that they are trying to do something, but if you start analyzing in a micro sense, there aren't too many differences in the policy which they are pursuing as was pursued during the 34 years till 2011 of the CPM government. Have they been able to handle the issue of land acquisition, which I would say was actually more of an issue of the TMC government rather than the CPM? I think there are promises, there are assurances, but actually private investment, the land acquisition for private investors, the situation hasn't changed very much. The situation in minds of many people continues to be what it was at Singur and later at Nalachar. I think the first investment, which a real large investment I heard about, was the day before, when the cement plant by JSW, the Jindals, which had earlier been shelved, and they were at that particular site putting up a steel plant with a much larger investment. They shelved that, and then a part of that land is now being used for a cement plant by the same group of investors. Similarly, I think the progress which Bengal has made is in the services sector, not so much in the manufacturing or the industrial sector. IT services which require much less investment, which actually use far more labor, the high literacy which is there in Bengal of 77%, you know, that's pretty high compared to the rest of the country. So I think on that respect, there has certainly been a good upward movement there. Similarly, I think Bengal has done well in terms of handling the power infrastructure. Power, as we all know, is a problem, major problem in the country, but in Bengal, that's been handled fairly well, at least the generation portion. Now what needs to be done is to have the transmission infrastructure for power and the distribution also strengthened, so that the generating companies, their operations become sustainable. Bengal has always had a higher road density compared to the rest of the country, national average, but the issues of maintenance of roads, etc., continue to persist, and that bothers industrialists and long-term investors in the state. Those issues have to be handled, as also the perception that crime, law and order in Bengal hasn't been handled very well. Yes.
Right. Professor Dasgupta, just come in and, you know, on this one point that, in fact, Mr. Dua also mentioned about the overall debt. And, you know, we've seen, even when the TMC government came to power, Amit Mitra was very concerned about the debt legacy that was left behind by the CPM government, you know, where when they had left, it was 42% of the state GDP. And then very recently, you wrote that it was brought down to about 35%. How much has the debt factor inhibited the Bengal government to sort of, to sort of making like big changes in the state? How much of a role has debt played in that regard?
Well, clearly debt has played a very major role here. In fact, today, as far as I know, when the central finance minister addressed the conference today, the summit today, even he mentioned that the debt has made a difference as far as the Bengal government's performance is concerned. Definitely that has been an important issue, and despite that, I think despite that, the government has been able to manage to do a few things, you know. In terms of casual empiricism, you know, just if you look at the look of the city of Calcutta right now, see, you will see that things have changed. Things look much better. Things look much better now. So it's true that, you know, what Mr. Dua was saying, that infrastructure is a big problem, but nonetheless, this government has been trying to do something about infrastructure, create a land bank, and some of these plots of land are as big as 600 acres, and 600 acre could be a large plot of land for a big industry if it wished to come. Now, I just wanted to add one point to this. You see, today, this particular summit has a very special feature, and that feature is that it has been attended by 4 very important central ministers. Now, they have shown a lot of interest in the development of Bengal. Now, there could be a lot of politics in this also, because this is a question of political economy. The central ministry, the BJP government, they may want to keep their footfall, make their footfall felt in the eastern region. They failed in Bihar, but they still have Bengal in mind, probably. This is just my guesswork. Now, from that point of view, it makes sense for them to collaborate, as far as the economics is concerned, to collaborate with the West Bengal government. Whereas, as far as the politics is concerned, that's different. Now, if they collaborate nicely, and properly, what's going to happen
Right.
probably is that in the next election, which is coming up, which almost surely
Right.
the present government will again win, but the BJP may win a few more seats and try and establish
Right.
some sort of a base in eastern India, which they need to do. And that makes a difference for this summit, because
Yeah.
the central government being with the state government means that as far as the infrastructure expenditure is concerned, there will be help coming from the center, which the state government, on account of the debt and other things,
Absolutely,
cannot afford by itself. And that is a good signal.
Right. Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much, Mr. Ajay Dua. We're going to leave it at that. In fact, cooperative federalism was one of the key slogans also of the Narendra Modi government, but so far we have seen very little evidence of that, something that Professor was alluding to. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us on The Big Picture. We've run out of time. We need to quickly now slip into a break. Coming up on the